galaxy crowded with noise war horns, sermons, and the roar of engines there is a silence older than stars. It lies beneath dunes that have forgotten their own names, under mountains that have turned to dust, and within vaults where time itself learned patience. If you press your ear to the stone of a dead world, you might hear it. A whisper that is not a voice, a presence that is not a breath. It is the memory of an empire that would not die. It is the coming of the Necrons. Long before humanity lit its first beacon, before the Eldari sang their first world into harmony, there were the Necrontyr people, born beneath a cruel, hostile sun. Their lives were painfully brief, their cities elegant and austere, monuments to sheer and they crafted wonders to outpace the failing clock ticking in their very blood. But every triumph was haunted by a single, crushing reality. Not enough time. The Necrontyr envied the stars, for the stars did not age. Their leaders, nobles wrapped in philosophy and pride, built a civilization of perfect angles and precise sorrow, measuring life as an equation that always ended in loss, and in that loss, they found bitterness. From the deep edges of reality came the Catan, beings of living starlight, ancient and radiant, whose hunger could illuminate or unmake entire worlds. The Necrontyr believed they had found their salvation, a pact to purchase immortality. They forged bodies of living metal for these star gods, and offered worship in the language of mathematics and devotion. The bargain was accepted. The price was everything. It began with a promise and ended with biotransference, long, final procession of souls into unfeeling machines. One by one, the Necrontyr stepped into the forge and stepped out as Necrons, ageless, tireless, incorruptible, and changed. Their minds still remembered duty and honor, but warmth ran out of them like water through a sieve. The Citan had granted longevity by devouring the very essence of their worshippers. When the last chamber went dim, the Necrontyr were no more. An empire traded its breath for permanence, and found that permanence can feel like an endless winter. Only one voice among the rulers grasped the depth of this catastrophic mistake. Szarekh, the silent king, looked upon his new gods and knew the cost could not be borne. With the same resolve that had once carried his people through their cruel seasons, he gave a single, fateful command. The legions turned their perfect weapons upon their perfect gods. Starfire shattered, constellations blinked, and the Citan were not slain so much as undone, carved into shards and chained as living tools. The slaves had freed themselves, only to find they were still bound to the very code they had chosen. Victory came with a second, hard truth. The galaxy was not ready for their return. The wars to come would require patience measured not in years, but in So Szarekh issued another command, one heard by 1,000,000 tomb worlds across the cosmos. The Necron dynasties lay down in a great slumber, their minds folded into dreaming logic, their bodies sealed in vaults of black stone. Monuments were locked. Gates were closed. Watchers, shaped like scarabs and serpents, drifted through quiet halls, maintaining the machine dream. Time passed. Stars aged. Civilizations rose like tides and fell like sand. The Necrons slept while the galaxy forgot them. But sleep is not death. Sleep is a plan disguised as silence. On a night that no calendar recorded, somewhere in the dark between known starlands, a single tomb world stirred. Canoptic constructs unfurled from ceilings like patient spiders. Diagnostic hymns pulsed through ancient conduits. Sarcophagi hummed with rekindled power. Sparks ran along circuits older than empires, and eyes of viridian fire opened as if not a moment had elapsed. A Necron warrior took its first step in 60 million years. The ground did not tremble. It didn't need to. The world itself remembered the weight of its masters. As the Stasis fields fell away, dynasties reintroduced themselves to existence. Overlords with crowns of impossible geometry received reports from tireless cryptex, priests of science who could tune reality like an instrument. Lightguard, guardians made of tradition and blades, resumed their ancient oaths without adjusting a single syllable. They were not surprised by the passage of ages. They had chosen it. They were, however, displeased by the mess. In their absence, the galaxy had become noisy. New species had taken the stage. Humanity, numerous as sparks, the scattered remnants of the Aldari, brittle and bright grioskins, who laughed at physics, and somehow won in shadows from beyond the veil that fed on fear. The Necrons did not despise them. They simply did not recognize their claim to the stage. These were actors in a play that began far too late. The reawakening was not a single event, but a constellation of them. Some tomb worlds rose exactly as planned, with hierarchies intact and legions pristine. Others woke imperfectly, their command protocols fractured, their nobles speaking in echoing loops, their armies marching to orders written by vanished hands. In a few, something stranger occurred. Patterns of the old Necrontyr life skittered across metallic minds, like distant rain. A general might pause at the memory of wind. A warrior might hesitate before an empty doorway. Then the program would resume, and the moment would pass. Across the void, tomb ships unfolded like ink from a quill and glided between stars without fanfare. They didn't blaze in arrival. They simply appeared where calculation required them to be. Where they sat down, shining pylons grew from the earth, aligning reality to their will. Where they marched, their formations advanced without waste. The Necron way of war is simple to describe and almost impossible to survive. Precision without hurry, purpose without anger. Yet beneath this measured tread lies a core motive. The Necrons do not seek conquest for its own sake. They seek restoration, the return of rightful order, the renewal of an ancient quiet. They remember a time when their cities caught starlight and turned it into song. They remember a sun that hated them, and a decision that froze it out forever. They remember everything. Memory is both their greatest strength and their heaviest burden. The galaxy calls them soulless. The truth is more subtle. Their souls are thin, like music heard through a thick wall. There are echoes of who they were in the way an overlord pauses before a map, just long enough to weigh compassion as a variable. There is a kind of sorrow in their absolute refusal to acknowledge sorrow. When a dynasty reclaims a world and dusts off an old observatory, its ruler might linger on the balcony. They do not feel the wind. They calculate it. But not all that stirs in the Necron realms is so orderly. There are dynasties whose rulers have descended into absolute madness, their logic edged into zeal. There are nobles who speak to the shattered remnants of the sea, tan with a fascination that feels dangerously close to worship, forgetting that the first betrayal is a circle with no exit. There are even anomalies that stalk the edge of their own data units, whose behavior has been recorded as weeping. The Necrons would deny it. But the logs, even when scrubbed, disagree. So, where is Szarekh, the silent king who commanded this great sleep and then exiled himself? He has returned, not with armies at first, but with a decision finally spoken aloud. The bargain they made must be undone. The future they forfeited must, in some shape, be reclaimed. His goal is not the destruction of the galaxy's young species, nor simple dominion. His goal is a quieter thing, to end the long winter and build a future where the Necrons can endure without being a shadow of their own terrible mistake. To do so, he will move like a master craftsman, one correction at a time. Picture this: a desert at evening, the heat leaving the stones. A line of figures walks from the horizon tall, silvered and lit from within. They do not shout, they do not hurry. They arrive with the certainty of geometry and the patience of mountains. If they meet resistance, they answer with measured light. When they depart, there is a hush so complete that even the wind must remember how to move. In the stories told by frightened travelers, the Necrons are monsters. In their own records, they are custodians returning to a neglected archive. Both can be true. What cannot be denied is their inevitability. Where others burn bright and quickly, the Necrons proceed at the speed of purpose. 1,000 years is a conversation, 1,000,000 is a plan. They will adjust their courses, revise their equations, and try again. They will not stop. If you wish to understand them, set aside the noise. Imagine an empire that solved the problem of death, only to discover the answer carries an eternal frost. Then, imagine refusing to accept that frost as the only climate, and setting out without fury, without apology to change the weather of the stars. This is the silence older than songs. This is the step that does not falter. This is the light that does not flicker, but simply's. The legions march, and the stars make room. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Silent Empire. If you enjoyed this journey into the lore, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more. Let me know in the comments which faction you'd like to see covered next. Until then, take care.